If it's so easy for you to judge God, you must choose one of your children to spend eternity in heaven. The other will go to hell.
Where does the sovereignty of God end and the responsibility of human beings begin? In all of that tension, are we responsible for our own life? Are we a victim of our circumstances and our parents and how God chooses heaven and hell and who goes where and all of that? I think one of the things that, biblically speaking, that we got to understand is that hey guys, thanks for watching this video. We are hitting big, heavy topics from the movie The Shack, but also these questions of heaven, hell, evil, suffering, the sovereignty of God, the responsibility of people. We'll see where it takes us. Thanks for watching.
What about the man who preys on innocent little girls? Is that man guilty?
I would damn him now.
And what of his father? The man who twisted him into this deviant monster.
I would damn him too.
How can you stop there? Doesn't the legacy of brokenness go all the way back to Adam? And what about God? Isn't he at fault? He set all this in motion. Especially if he knew the outcome.
You want me to say it? Absolutely. God is to blame.
Well, if it's so easy for you to judge God, you must choose one of your children to spend eternity in heaven. The other will go to hell.
I can't.
Can't do what? I'm only asking you to do something you believe God does. So, who will go to hell? You could choose Kate. She said some pretty hurtful things. She shuts you out. You're not even sure if she loves you anymore. Or you could choose Josh. He's being disobedient, sneaking out, lying to you. You didn't know that. Mackenzie, make your choice.
I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this.
Can't do what?
I can't. I won't.
You must.
This isn't a game.
You have to.
You know what? This isn't fair.
You must.
It isn't fair. I can't. Take me. I'll go instead of them.
One of the big questions for our culture is we try to figure God out, and I think that's what the clips from The Shack's trying to do. Is it's saying there's a way we can view God, and I think what happens is we as a culture put God on trial, or what C.S. Lewis called God in the dock. And in the dock is an English phrase of he's on trial in a courtroom, and we have to be careful with that because we have such a limited perspective when it comes to massive questions of sovereignty, evil, heaven, hell, how all this works. And the Bible only gives us a glimpse into these things. Sometimes we have to be very careful to not out-Bible the Bible. And sometimes they'll give us little glimpses. It doesn't give us the temperature of hell. It doesn't give us the furniture of heaven. It doesn't give us the science textbook about how creation all started and every nuance. And so we tend to fill in all those gaps, and we get all, wrapped up in ourselves and spend 2,000 years writing history and theology and all these things. And it's like sometimes there's a gap in knowledge. Sometimes there's a mystery that we have to understand and celebrate. And of course, the massive questions of where the sovereignty of God, this tension, the tension is kind of in the scene. Where does the sovereignty of God end and the responsibility of human beings begin? And all of that tension, are we responsible for our own life? Are we a victim of our circumstances and our parents, and how God chooses heaven and hell and who goes where and all of that? I think one of the things that, biblically speaking, that we got to understand is that every human being is fallen. Every human being is sinful and, according to the Bible, deserving of God's judgment. But because, and you got this kind of clip where I want to go instead of them. It's kind of this gospel moment where Jesus comes in the place of people suffering under the wrath of God and says, let me go instead. Let me take their place. Let me substitute myself. And so it's kind of this great gospel moment. And I think, you know, when you're reading the book of Genesis and you see Adam and Eve fall in the garden and there's sin, and then by the end of Genesis, when God's dealing with Joseph, and one of the last lines in Genesis 50 is, talking about his brothers throwing them in the well, and then all the great things that happen, he says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And I think that could almost be written over all of evil, all sin. God is going to take it and he's going to bring a good out of these tensions and these questions. And some of these things will never be able to actually be all tied up with a bow. And I think in our Western culture, we sit around and drink our lattes and we put God on trial, and we're like, well, how could, I don't believe in hell. There's a movement over the last, probably 50 years in theology and even in church where people go, I'm going to pick and choose what I believe about the Bible and God. I choose not to believe in hell. I think everybody goes to heaven when we die. And of course, that's not what the Bible lays out. Jesus goes, no, there's actually heaven and a hell. But we tend to say, well, these suburban, we live in these suburban settings where we're well off and we're middle class and we're drinking our Starbucks and we're going, oh, here's what we like about God, here's what we don't. The problem with that is you're reading the prompter of your cultural moment, and hell to you becomes more of a repulsion than a skeptical doubt. You don't have data that tells you hell doesn't exist. You just don't like the thought of it. But if you took a plane and you went somewhere else in the world where people were suffering violence, people were coming into tribes and taking women and children away, and you never saw justice happen in this world on those people, I can tell you, you wouldn't lose sleep over the concept that God is going to mete out perfect judgment on evil forever, eternally. And so in fact, if you didn't have a God that most of the world would be like, hey, I don't want to believe in this God anymore. You need, as Miroslav Volf once said, you need the kind of the nicety of the culture that we live in the suburban Western world to ever come up with doubts about the vengeance and the judgment of God. And so there's probably, 100 topics where we just have to be careful that our theology and our philosophy isn't the result of simply the cultural moment that we're living in, and we're reading the prompter and we're influenced so much that we start to reject things that the Bible clearly lays out. Let the Bible kick against you, which is what the woman's trying to do, is trying to put a mirror up. And oftentimes I find in our culture, instead of allowing the Bible to be a mirror to us, to look at ourselves, to go into our own soul, to go into our own behavior, to go into our own habits and wonder about our own life, we use it as binoculars. Even if you look down the YouTube comments on this video and probably any, most other videos that we've put out around, there tends to be people who react using the Bible or their own worldview as binoculars, looking out, judging other people, being critical of other people, rather than stopping for a moment and saying, what would the Bible actually say about me if I use it as a mirror versus using it as a hammer, or a different philosophy as a hammer? When you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And so you're hitting it away and you're criticizing and keeping yourself from potentially the conviction that this guy goes through, where it's like, what if I was face to face with all of this being true? What would it say about me? What is the state of my soul? What is the state of my life? And allowing it, the concept of God, to work as a mirror in my own life, raising the bigger questions. So I think that's probably a better use of the big questions that we face in life. And I don't think Christianity is going to fill in all the gaps to every detail of suffering and pain and evil and who goes where. We're not going to be able to answer all those questions. The question is, where are you at personally with Jesus? And the fact that he's the one who either took the wrath of God for you, or you're going to take it because you're not going to let him take it for you. That's the biggest, there's a book written years ago, the subtitle was Heaven, Hell, and the Fate of Every Person Who Ever Existed. And I think that's what this kind of appeals to. We got to wrestle with when it comes to Jesus. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube video, turn your notifications on, and like this video and share it with people. Hopefully it's super helpful to you. Thanks for watching.